I'm Chris. I'm a physiotherapist in the UK, and I've kind of developed a bit of an interest and passion for introducing strength training to anyone who didn't think they were able to do it, and to anyone who had age-related conditions that might be holding them back, and they ruled it out, and just seeing the confidence it grows from there, and hence the kind of putting together this talk and never too old to lift. So we've got a few here. So we've got Anita's from Scotland, Eve is in Bridgnorth, Shropshire, Jan is in Wales, Pembrokeshire, and then Pat from Doncaster. So hi everyone. So thank you for giving up an hour of your time on this Wednesday afternoon. So today I'm going to talk about strength training as an older adult, why we should be doing it. I'm going to recognise you've probably got a few objections to maybe starting, and a few fears you have around it or feel nervous about it. So I'm going to use a few case studies and show you why you don't need to be nervous about it. And often the things that you think are reasons not to start are actually things that can be improved by strength training. So we'll talk a bit more about that. I'm going to talk about, hopefully give some actionable steps to allow you to start to explore strength training and put together a program. And then I'm also going to, I'll be upfront and honest from the start, I'm going to introduce you to the online course that I run called Stronger for Life, and a few details about that you might be interested in, and also an offer for anyone that is open for the next week, but also to anyone who is watching this live today that you might be able to sort of take advantage of. But if you're not interested in the course, you certainly, the talk itself will give you everything you need. Also, if you combine that with the free ebook that you should have received by now, and if you haven't, let me know and I can send a link through. But with that ebook and the talk today, you'll have enough knowledge that you can get started. The course is just a kind of another option to help you get started there. So in terms of strength training and how much we should be doing. So if we look at the World Health Organization's physical activity guidelines, there's two components to the guidelines. So the first one are the ones that if anyone has heard of, they tend to know about the aerobic minutes. So with this, we are often finding that you're trying to do, this is a weekly goal, you're trying to do 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise. So what the moderate and the vigorous intensity refer to is how out of breath you get when you're exercising. So in order for your minutes to count, we do have to move into at least the moderate. So you're finding it harder to breathe and you're working harder to do so, but you should still be able to maintain conversation as you're going through. The vigorous refers to you're working that much harder that you're so out of breath you would really struggle to maintain a conversation of more than a few words, and that's a difference. And if you're in the vigorous category and you're working a lot harder, because of that you only have to do half the number of minutes per week, which is a 75 minutes per week, as opposed to if you're not working quite as hard but you're still out of breath and you're in the moderate, you have to do 150 minutes. And it can be a combination of the two. Some of the smart watches I've got, one of the Garmin watches, the app on the phone that links in with a watch, it kind of tells you how many minutes, active minutes you've done in a week. So for every moderate intensity minute you've done, it gives you 1 minute. For every vigorous intensity minute you've done, it gives you 2 minutes. And it tells you whether you're reaching your target there. So a lot of people know that they should be doing that side of it, but they don't realize that the activity guidelines also say that we should be doing muscle strengthening sessions. Now it says we should be doing at least 2 sessions of muscle strengthening per week, but that is for 18 to 65-year-olds. What people don't often know is that there are a second set of guidelines for people, or physical activity guidelines for people over the age of 65. Now, the minutes of aerobic exercise are exactly the same, 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous. But the big difference is that the over 65s is saying that we should be doing at least 3 sessions of muscle strengthening, as opposed to the 2 that the under 65 should be doing. Now, this is often quite interesting and a bit of a surprise to people, because people often think that as you get older, we should play it safe and we should probably do less of the things that are more strenuous and try and stick to what people consider safer options like swimming or yoga or Pilates, which again are all great forms of exercise, but they don't necessarily have the same muscle strengthening outcome that we're looking for. But yeah, people think you often should be doing less as you get older. And actually, the World Health Organization are great at recognizing that if you're over 65, you're probably going to be losing muscle mass at a faster rate. And to counter that, we need to be doing more. So we should be aiming for 3 sessions of muscle strengthening. Now, there's a study out there that showed that only about 24.2% of adults are meeting the guidelines. So this is all adults rather than just over 65s. But yeah, less than a quarter of people are meeting the guidelines for both aerobic and muscle strengthening. 22.7 are doing just the aerobic and 6.8 are just doing the muscle strengthening. So if we look at the muscle strengthening side of things, that's 2/3 of people aren't doing enough of muscle strengthening. And in a second, I'm going to come on to what a muscle strengthening exercise looks like, or what intensity you have to work at to actually get stronger muscles as a result. And in this, they're quite generous on what they think is classed as a muscle strengthening activity. And I would argue that some of the things they include probably don't actually build muscle strength. So for me, I think it's actually probably more than 2/3. It's probably more like 3/4 of people aren't doing enough. And I'm going to come on to a second, what not doing enough muscle strengthening and allowing the decline in muscle strength to happen, some of the things that might lead to later on, and why it's so important that we really do try and make a change and start to sort of build and do more than we're currently doing. And with that in mind, whilst I'm saying 3 sessions is what we should be doing as over 65s, if you're currently not doing anything, then making a sudden jump to 3 is going to feel like a big task that, whilst you might have a bit of motivation and manage it for a few weeks, the chances are you're going to drop off with that. So initially, don't put too much pressure on yourself. We could start with 1 to 2 sessions a week to begin with, and as you get more confident, ideally then try and add a third in. But if you even settle at 2 sessions a week, you're way ahead of most people by doing that. But yeah, if you can, 3 sessions eventually is what we'd like to be doing. So I just wanted to get a little bit of an idea about why you are here watching this presentation. So I've got 4 options here, and I'd love you to just put in the chat about which option is the most relevant for you. So first one is number 1, I know I would benefit from being stronger. I just have no idea of where to start. 2, I have lifted weights in the past, but worry that starting again will flare up an old injury. 3, I've tried following YouTube workouts, but struggle to keep up or have to skip exercises. And then 4, I have osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, etc. And I'm just not sure whether it's safe for me. So yeah, again, use the chat feature. Either put the number that is the most relevant. You don't need to put the whole sentence, or it might be there's a combination of 2 or 3 there. So again, love to know kind of who we've got in the room. Whilst you're doing that, if you're watching this because you consider yourself a veteran gym goer, or particularly veteran in the weight section of the gym, you already know how to put together a workout program, and you were kind of hoping you might get tipped to get your next personal best, then this might not be the video for you. This is more aimed at anyone who is at the beginner stages, who is looking to take their first few steps or restart again afterwards. So anyone who doesn't really know how to put a program together, you might be confident with the exercises, but it's more the programming and the intensity you need to work at. So that's who this video is more for. But yeah, so C is put number 1. So you know you benefit from being stronger, but just don't know where to start. Same with Jan. Anita's put 2, I've lifted weights in the past, but worry again that starting will flare up an old injury. Again, very common fear there. And you've got Eve typing now, so I'll just see what Eve says. Oh, just stop there. Eve, is none of these. I do pole fitness, stretch class, and aerial hoop. 67-year-olds would like to do these activities better. Okay, yeah. So I often say that muscle strengthening is great at building. I kind of class it as it's almost like investing and saving, and things like the pole fitness and the stretch class and aero hoop are a bit like the spending. And in order to keep doing those at the level you want to do them at, sometimes you have to put in money or the investing into it. So you're building enough strength in the bank that you can continue to do those things. Because as you lose strength, there's certain things like sports like golf and tennis, things you do with the grandchildren that become harder and harder to do because the strength declines. So yeah, that's a great one to add in there, Eve. So thank you. And then Pat says number 1, that she knows that benefit with being stronger, but no idea where to start. So yeah, this all sounds like you're in the right place, and this video will help you with that. So objections. There's often a few objections I hear and about strength training as an older adult and the fears that people have. So I just wanted to cover a few of those first. So I've got 4 that I'm going to go through, and then we'll talk about actually why they're not necessarily things to stop you and how we can improve on those by being stronger. So first one is I'm too old to get started now. Again, a lot of people think that the later you leave things in life to get started, that it means you probably miss the boat and it's too late to start. And you may have heard me say before, if you've watched anything I've done in the past, but I've been, and sort of a bit still am to this day, caught out by that same thought process of I've never got round to doing any form of martial arts. It's always something I've felt like maybe I want to give a go, and I've never quite had the time. And again, maybe it's an excuse I'm telling myself, but there's part of me that thinks I'm 38 now, getting near to 40, and I think, well, maybe it's too late to get started. I'll stick with the things I already know and I'm already doing. And then I realised that how hypocritical it is me telling you that you're not too old to get started with weights, where I'm telling myself I'm too old to get started with martial arts. So that is my aim this year, now that my son's a bit older, I've got a bit more time, is that I'm going to be taking on some martial arts there. So Eve said I've started kickboxing at 48, so that's fantastic. So yeah, we'll use that as inspiration, Eve, to take that first step. I've already been looking up where I can find in the Solihull area where I live. So yeah, chasing me up on that in the next month or 2 to see whether I actually took action. But yeah, so it's something I hear often a lot. And I just wanted to show you the story of someone who sees me in the clinic. So Phil. So Phil saw me just before lockdown started in the summer of 2019. So at that time, he was 76 years old and initially came in with no intention of doing any kind of strengthening work. Came in with symptomatic arthritis in his knee. So I say symptomatic arthritis. You can have arthritis in your knee, and whilst the arthritis may not change, it can flare up in terms of being more painful, and it can settle down and be more manageable. So his was at a point where it was bothering him. He loves being in the garden and was finding that he just couldn't take on the projects that he would have liked to, and feeling like his world was getting a little bit smaller. And he, interestingly, had never done any sport after school. I say never. He'd never really kind of done any routine sport after school. He'd done some sporadic swimming, some sporadic tennis, but never committed to anything. So it's not like Phil came in being really active. He certainly hadn't been in the gym before. And the initial part of my sort of treatment was to help calm the knee down and incorporate some strengthening around the knee. And that naturally evolved into some gym-based exercise. And Phil's really embraced that, and he's taken that on. And whilst we had a few disruptions because of lockdowns, just within 2 years of it, so I think this photo was taken about 2 years ago, but I still see Phil to this day, and he's agreed to let me use his story. He's been able to get to a point where he can deadlift 75 kilograms from the floor, and he can squat with 60 kilograms on his back. And bearing in mind, he weighs 63 kilograms himself, he's able to do a deadlift of over his body weight and a squat of just under his body weight. But that's someone who'd never lifted a weight prior to 2019 and started at the age of 76, and like I say, 80 years old now. And the really good news is his knee, whilst it's still aware of his knee, it's not stopping him doing the things he wants to do. And he's gone on a big traveling trip to Australia and managed to be active there, but he's in the garden, he's doing all the jobs he wants to do there, and he's in control of it rather than it being in control of him. So yeah, a nice example there that you're not too old to get started. Age isn't the reason. Age will often come with other kind of conditions, age-related conditions that make starting harder often, and things we have to adapt and modify around. But age in itself isn't the reason not to start. It's just going to bring some things with it that makes starting harder. So the next, we kind of covered a little bit there in terms of having a chronic condition or injury. So Phil came in with that chronic knee condition that improved as a result. So not only it wasn't a reason not to start, it was something that improved as a result of doing it. And then as seeing the improvement there has inspired him to carry on doing more of it. But I also wanted to introduce you to Carol. So Carol is one of the members of the Stronger for Life course. She had similar. She was finding that she needed to rely on pain relief, so paracetamol and ibuprofen, to manage her knee pain. She was limited on her walking distance because of it. And again, she felt like she was slowly being able to do less and less because of her knee. And you'll see in a video towards the end that she can, after 4 weeks of doing the course, she said she got back from a walking holiday to the Lake District, and not only was she now not taking paracetamol ibuprofen, she had absolutely no reaction to walking in the Lake District with inclines and declines. And yeah, she was out all day and her knee wasn't a problem. And I can't guarantee this is kind of the result that everybody's that you'll get in 4 weeks, no pain at all. Because like I say, Phil never got to a point where he had no pain. His was just more manageable. But building strength around the knee can certainly make a huge impact on reducing pain around long-standing arthritic conditions that have been problematic for a while. So yeah, you'll hear more from Carol later. And the other one that was really interesting is Jan, Jan is someone who, again, is one of the first members I had of Stronger for Life in September last year. And her story is a bit different from Phil. So she's always been very active. She was doing yoga, plays tennis. She's very active in the garden. She actually teaches sort of similar to kind of yoga and body movements. And her main complaint was a little bit about back stiffness, but a lot of it was more that she, since menopause, found that she wasn't sleeping throughout the night. Yes, dreadful sleep. And she found that her fatigue levels during the day were really low. And again, she thought that might be an issue for her starting, and that by lifting weights, it's going to add to the fatigue and it's going to just make her days even worse. And she really debated whether to start or not, but she knew that being stronger was something that she should probably add in. She had no expectation of the fatigue improving. She thought it was just something that was going to hold her back. And actually what she found, and you'll hear from her shortly, that in 3 or 4 weeks, she had her first night where she slept through the night for 8 hours straight like a log, and her energy levels throughout the day have improved dramatically. And that's something I wasn't particularly expecting either, but is something that I've heard a couple of people say, is that fatigue levels have actually improved as a result rather than got worse, which is kind of what you tend to think. Is people think that exercise in general might make you feel more tired, but it's quite common to hear that people actually feel more energized as a result of exercise. So again, most chronic conditions or age-related conditions are things people fear. And again, we do have to adapt around them. I'm not going to lie, having those things does make starting harder. But if we can find the right start point and progress from there, you're generally going to find that you're going to improve those symptoms and feel like you're in a lot more control of your life and have more options available to you and opportunities. Next one off in here is objection number 3, lifting weights is dangerous. So people understandably sort of look at people in the gym lifting large amounts of weight, like more than their body weight, on their back or lifting it from the floor. And the fear is that it's a dangerous thing to do and you're going to cause yourself an injury. And that's then the reason not to start. And wanted to bring in a quote that I really like from someone on Instagram called Brett Contreras. And he says, if you think lifting is dangerous, try being weak. Being weak is dangerous. And we're going to explore that more in a second. But yeah, I love this because it's the lack of strength generally starts to create an environment where things like the arthritic knee pain or hips or back pain, actually the environment is there that they actually start to become more symptomatic and feel worse. And actually building strength tends to create an environment where actually those things start to settle. So there's that side of things, but we can take things a little step further. And actually, if we kind of fast forward a couple of decades into the future, if we continue to allow the loss of muscle strength to happen, so that's called sarcopenia, it can predispose us to falls. So people with sarcopenia tend to have, or the loss of muscle strength tends to have a higher ratio of falls. Those falls can often lead to fractures because if you lost muscle strength, you've probably lost some bone density there. And a fall with a lower bone density is more likely to result in a fracture. Those who have fractures often may need some time in a hospital or might need surgery to fix it, which is going to need a period of recovery. And that period of recovery where you're less active creates even more an environment for the muscle strength to kick in. And unfortunately, they have shown that 20% of people over the age of 60 that have a hip fracture, 20% will enter long-term care and not come back out again. So then does have an effect on mortality as well there. Then again, sarcopenia, they found, is often prevalent with the following conditions. So cardiovascular disease, dementia, diabetes, and respiratory disease. So again, there's a bit of an argument. You could say that the loss of muscle strength has created an environment for those diseases to become prevalent, or it could be that those diseases have created an environment for sarcopenia to kick in. But a bit of chicken and egg, it's difficult to know, but the likelihood is they're feeding into each other. And if we can start to build some muscle strength, we might just help to either reduce the chance that these diseases are going to come on, or we might reduce the intensity of them. So what we know is that the loss of muscle strength not only increases the chance of pain, it increases the chance of all of those words in red there. And by building strength, the thought process there, we can start to reduce the chance that any of those words in red are going to happen. Anita says, diagnosed with hiatus hernia, taken a while to get under control, so don't want to aggravate it, but still want to do weights, but the right ones. So again, it's all about the slow progression there. A lot of people rush to push the muscles to fatigue too quickly. And I'm going to come on to that side of things in a second. But if any of you have got any kind of things you're worried about, then we have to take things slower as we progress than someone who's in their 20s and 30s who doesn't have any of those things to worry about. But equally, if we stay safe and don't progress, we're not necessarily going to be building strength as a result of the exercise. So we do need to plan for progressions in the future, but that doesn't have to be in a few weeks. That could be in several months, or could be even further than that. As long as we're slowly making progressions, I don't care about what the rate of progression is. So yeah, you would test the waters with certain exercises first, see how you feel with a hiatus hernia, make sure nothing's worsening. If that's okay, you've got the green light to do a little bit more and a little bit more. And the same is true with knee pain, the same is true with the fatigue, is we start very low level to test the water and we build on top of that. So yeah, like I say, we'll come on to all of that in a second. But my last objection was, I don't like going to the gym. And it's understandable. The gym can be busy. You've firstly got to leave the house, tackle the traffic. You've got to find a parking space. You've got to go in. It might be busy and the equipment you were hoping to use isn't available. Again, I know a lot of people probably will still be working. The advantage of being older and potentially retired is you might have a bit more flexibility in the times you can get into the gym, which does counter that to a certain degree. One of the big objections I do hear about the gym is that they worry about people judging them. And often I understand that, but what I've started to realize that most people aren't looking or bothered what anyone else is doing. They're all too focused on what they're doing. And once you realize that, it becomes quite, what's the word I'm looking for? It really helps you to kind of just embrace going, and so like say, you suddenly realize no one's worried about it. And another analogy that I use is that when my son was a bit younger, he's 4 now, but when he was kind of 18 months too, and lockdowns eased and we could start going to things like the baby sensory or baby music classes, I'm not naturally someone, I can't sing to save my life. I can't dance really to save my life. And it's not the natural environment I feel comfortable in. And I used to feel a bit self-conscious when I first went. I'm worried that the other people might be looking at me and wondering what I was doing and why I wasn't kind of getting into it. And after a few sessions, I looked up, and every time I looked up, every parent was so focused on what their own child was doing. They never looked at what anyone else is doing. And once I realized that, it meant that I could actually just embrace being there. And I really enjoyed the time in those classes with him, because it was just about me and him in there rather than worrying about what anyone else is doing. And the same is true with the gym. Is you'll realize as you go in there and you start working on your plan and you're working through it and you know what you're doing, no one else is worried about what you're doing. So that's not a reason not to go to the gym. However, the gym isn't the only place to do this. You can do all of this from home. You'll hear in a second that in order to build strength, you're going to need to push the muscles at a high enough intensity. And for some people to start with, body weight will be enough to do that. But eventually body weight isn't enough, and you're likely to need some equipment or something with some weight to it. So initially that can be bottles of water in a rucksack, and there's things around the house that have some weight to it, but eventually you're probably going to want some equipment. And I just wanted to introduce to Mike. So Mike is someone that initially found the ebook in lockdown, and he's since joined the Stronger for Life course. But again, very active. He does mountain biking, he does fell running, and he's also got 4 young grandchildren. And he was getting to a point where he had a few complaints that were affecting his running. Walking, he would pride himself on being out at the front, and he was now lagging behind sometimes and people having to wait for him. But the thing that really bothered him, he was struggling to lift his youngest grandchild. And he found me just before or during lockdown, and because of that, he didn't have the option of going to the gym. So Mike went through the program, and I think he found a couple of old weights, or someone had given him some, and he found a few more on eBay. And he's progressed, and he's doing everything from home, and has continued to do everything from home. And he's got to the point where he's deadlifting more than 100 kilograms. And admittedly, he's now progressed on from that setup you see there. He has I think for his 70th birthday, his family bought him a squat rack to put in the garage, and he's got a kind of more sophisticated bar and the weight plates. But it's just to highlight that you can do all of this from home with a little bit of equipment, and it doesn't need to be too expensive either. And I'll share a little bit more about the outcome of his story in a second. And I thought I'd show you, this is my mum's living room. So she got started when I sort of started doing this, and she has just got that kettlebell set that she's got underneath. She's got the mat at the back, and the little black bag at the side has got some resistance bands in. And she can very quickly pull all of that out, do her workout, and then push it all back in. And again, you don't need much space. The storage doesn't take up too much depending on what equipment you've got. And at home is definitely a viable option to do all of this. And interestingly, what I found from a couple of members of Stronger for Life is they'd never thought they'd go to the gym. They'd completely shut that door, and it was always going to do this from home. And actually, once they got more confident with their workouts, they knew what exercises were doing, they were confident lifting weights and pushing their muscles to fatigue, they then started to realize they're not as worried about going into the gym, because a big fear they had about going into the gym and being judged is because they in themselves didn't know what they were going to do when they got there. And they were kind of almost judging themselves for not knowing what they're doing and assume people would feel the same. But actually, because they knew exactly what they're going to do, they were just transitioning their current program into the gym. One of the members, she said that she'd booked a holiday towards, I think it was in the autumn last year, and she'd picked a holiday based or picked a hotel for the holiday based on the fact it had a gym that she could go to. And she'd laughed at herself because that's something she never thought she'd do. So, yeah, start off at home. You might want to progress to the gym at some point. You might be like Mike and continue to do everything at home. But yeah, the gym is doing things from home is definitely a viable option. So they're the objections. So hopefully I've showed you now that the things you might have been kind of thinking that would hold you back could actually improve by being stronger. So how do you get started? So the first thing you actually want to do is look at your goals. Why do you want to be stronger? Yes, there's some people like me that say, and you hear it more on the podcast, we all know we should be getting stronger. But unless you really kind of think about how it's going to improve your life and you set some goals about what you can achieve if you were stronger and how you can see your progress towards that goal, the short-term motivation you've got now by watching this and kind of looking at the ebook and potentially doing the course and getting started, if you don't have goals you're working towards, you're probably going to find that motivation wanes and you'll give up with the progress. And it's why a lot of people last kind of a month, 2 months, or it's why a lot of people who set a New Year's resolution don't make it into February to continue doing it, because they've not really looked at why they're doing it. And I said I'd mention Mike's sort of the conclusion to Mike's story. And at the start, I said he'd struggled lifting his grandchild because of pain and doing the active things he liked to do. And once the lockdown's kind of relieved and you could start seeing people again, he went to his grandson's, who was 4 at that time, his 4th birthday party. And they had a bouncy castle, and not only did he get to see them enjoy that and be around them, he was on the bouncy castle bouncing with them, and he wasn't worried about kind of picking them up and sort of play wrestling with them. And yeah, he, through being stronger and being more confident, was able to really kind of have that close relationship with his grandchildren, rather than being the grandfather that had to sit on the side watching them have fun. He was there, part of it. I'm going to show a quick video now that highlights important goal planning. So it's about a 2-minute video. I'll admit it's a Christmas video, so really not the time of year for it now, but I'll play it now and then I'll kind of describe a little bit at the end. So again, if you have trouble hearing it, do let me know. But it should start playing now. Brilliant. Hopefully my sound is back on. So apologies to Pat there. He said she couldn't see anything. So hopefully everyone else could see that. So basically what happened, there was old man managed to find a kettlebell and he started to do some exercises with it whilst looking at a picture frame, and then continued to do it despite the look of concern from his daughter, the look of kind of almost annoyance of the neighbour. And at the end, he then went on Christmas Day, picked up his daughter and lifted her up so she could place a star on top of the Christmas tree. And what I love about that is every time he was working out, he was looking at a picture frame. And obviously at the time he didn't know what it was, but he was looking at a picture of his granddaughter. And that was his goal. That was his motivation. He knew what he wanted to do. And that's what he kept working towards. And I love the fact that they brought in the disdain from the neighbour who looked angry at him for even considering working out, and the concern from the daughter. And it kind of does reflect society's views on older adults doing strength-based training. You're going to encounter this as well. So if you start to kind of embrace this and you start doing it, there's going to be people that tell you should be taking it easy, you're doing too much, you should slow down. And you just got to hold strong and know that as long as you are taking things and are gradually progressing things rather than rushing things, you're doing the right thing. It's them that are doing it wrong. And hopefully you can sort of show the improvements you make and inspire them to take action themselves. So yeah, great video there. Yeah, really powerful. It's probably one of the most memorable adverts I've seen. Just out of interest there, was everyone else able to see that? Or was it just Pat that couldn't see it there? And I did mention in the chat there, I forgot to mention at the start, if you're watching on a phone rather than desktop, on the phone, there are kind of 4 buttons at the bottom that you can kind of change the tab between the video, the chat, and then I think the presentation. So there's a couple more videos that as you're going through, if you then find that you're not able to see it, maybe try that. Eve said she saw it. Anita said yes, brought a tear to my eye. Yeah, did me the first time I saw it too. Good. So we've talked about goal planning and the importance of that. So now it's important to know what is muscle strength. So Jan says, watching on a tablet, everything good. So muscle strength is the ability of a muscle to produce a peak force. So it's the most amount of force in one go that muscle can produce. And why that's important to know is that if we want to increase muscle strength, we have to work at that higher level of how much force that muscle can produce. So a nice analogy I tend to use for this is if you're someone who runs and you want to run faster, if you only ever run slower for longer periods of time, your top speed isn't going to change. You're not going to suddenly learn to run faster as a result. In order to learn to run faster, you have to spend a bit of time working at that faster pace and trying to push it rather than staying at the lower end and working for longer and longer. And the same is true for muscle strength. If we want to build muscle strength, if we stay at the lower end and only work with low weights for long periods of time, the ability for the muscle to produce a peak force and get the bigger or larger amount of strength isn't going to change. We have to start to push the muscle to the point of fatigue where we're really challenging the top end strength of it in order for it to get stronger. So what we do is we bring in this idea of training to fatigue or failure. So when we're doing an exercise, if I were to ask you to do 15 repetitions in an exercise, when you reach the 15th repetition, we want the 15th repetition to almost be the last one you can do because of muscle fatigue rather than because of joint pain or any other reasons. But say you're doing a squat or sitting to standing 15 times. If I ask you to do a 16th, if you got it perfectly, you'd find the 16th isn't possible because the muscles have just got nothing left to give. That is the point. It's the last few repetitions where the muscle strength actually builds. And the initial ones were to get you to the point of fatigue. So if you got to 15 and actually you could have quite easily done another 10 or 15 if I'd asked you to in one continuous go, whilst it's not a waste of time, it's still good to be training and moving and doing exercise. You're probably not going to increase any muscle strength as a result. So if muscle strength was the aim of doing these exercises, you're not going to get any closer to your goal of that. Now, there is a bit more nuance into how many repetitions that we want to achieve muscle fatigue at. So generally considered, if you reach muscle fatigue anywhere within 15 repetitions, you're going to build some strength. However, the earlier we can get the muscles to fatigue, the more strength you get as an outcome, and you can then be more efficient with your workouts. So generally it's considered that 12 to 15 repetitions is what we call the endurance phase. You're going to get a lot more endurance. You're going to get some increased size of muscle, which is hypertrophy, and you're going to get a bit of strength, but you are going to get some strength. So it's a good starting point because you don't need as much weight or resistance to reach fatigue at 15 repetitions than you do. You need a lot more weight or resistance to do it at 5 repetitions. And if you're jumping straight in at that, there's a risk we're going to flare something up. So yeah, it's a good start point. But if we can get to 8 to 12 repetitions, what you find is you get a lot more size of muscle growth with some strength and a little bit of endurance. And then if we can get it closer to 5 repetitions, you'll get a lot more strength, some size, and some endurance. Worth noting with the size, if you're doing 2 to 3 sessions a week, you're not suddenly going to get massive and bulky and turn into kind of the female Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're doing 6 sessions a week at very specific intensities, and yeah, the amount of volume of training they do is massive. So when we talk about size versus strength, you're not going to suddenly get bulky. You might see a little bit of size of the muscles, but yeah, generally, if we can push to fatigue within 15 repetitions, we're going to get strength. And if over time we can get closer to 5 repetitions by lifting more weight or using more resistance, then we're going to get a lot more strength. So therefore, again, more efficient with our workouts and not needing quite so much time. Then we've got the exercise selection. So I've put this next because actually a lot of people think the exercise selection is the most important part and what is a strengthening exercise, and they really pick the exercises first. Actually, the exercises aren't quite as important as the intensity you perform the exercises at. So I'm going to go through a few of the type of exercises that I tend to suggest first. But there is no wrong or right answer with this. You can pick whatever exercises you like. Ideally, we want to cover all of the body at some point within the week and push close to fatigue so that those muscles get stronger. But the type of exercises I tend to bring in, these what we call functional movement patterns. So they are movements that are replicating things we do on a day-to-day basis. So a squat replicates the action of standing up or sitting down. A hip hinge is where we hinge from the hip, and I'm going to do a little video of what these all look like in a second, but it replicates kind of picking something, a plant pot up off the floor, or something that's got a weight off the floor. A lunge is you might have something in your hands, like if you're holding a toddler or a newborn, you want to get something that's on the floor, but you haven't got a spare hand, and if you lean too far forwards, the baby's head falls forward. So actually you want to keep an upright posture, so you kind of adopt this lunge position. So we tend to do lunge with a bit of weight on a day-to-day basis. Push is we push something away from us, or we push ourselves away from the floor, like a push-up. Pull is we pull something towards us against resistance. Rotation is rotation of the body against resistance, and then carrying something, again, we might carry a suitcase or a wheelbarrow in the garden. So you're lifting both handles and walking forwards and carrying that weight. So again, I'm going to play a video here, so hopefully Pat, you can see it, but I'm going to describe what I'm showing anyway, and there's no sound to this video. So in here, this is a form of a squat exercise. So this is a dumbbell squat where I'm lifting or sitting down to a chair, standing back up, holding the weights at my side. I might take the chair away and I can start to explore deeper into that and back up. So again, down, pushing through the legs to come back up. And then a progression of that, I might then want some more weight, so I can then use a barbell and put that across my back, and then I don't have to worry about my grip strength. I can hold that there, and then again I can go deep, or I could put a chair back underneath me and go for a shallower movement. This is a form of hip hinge, so I'm hinging at my hips, they're bending and then extending, so this is a bridge. this is the first kind of option there. This is a Romanian deadlift. So I'm bending at the waist, keeping my knees shins stay vertical, so not drifting too far forward. So the movement is very much coming from the hips. And then this is conventional deadlift. So I start from the bar or from the floor with the bar, and then I lift it up and then back down again. So again, these are all just variations of the exercises you could select for your workout. So again, that's the deadlift from the side. Then we come on to the lunge-based exercises. So this is called a split squat. So I'm then just standing up and lowering my back knee and then standing back up again. And if I take the blocks away, I can go into deeper motions. It puts a bit more stress through the knee, so it's whether your knee can tolerate that, but it's more challenging to go lower, and then I can add some more weight to it. Or I could actually just add the weight on one side. So the weight is trying to pull me down to one side, so I have to use my abdominals a little bit to keep me upright. So it actually makes it slightly more challenging. Then this is a push, so I'm pushing that weight away from me. So this is a bench press or chest press. This is a shoulder press. So depending on the mobility in your shoulder, you might not be able to get your shoulder fully above your head. So the chest press will be better. But if you can, and then standing is a bit more difficult because again, you're less stable because you're not sitting down. So you might have to use your abdominals a bit more. This is a pull exercise. So you can pull the against resistance of the band towards you. Or if you've got some weights, you can only use weights in the direction of gravity. So you have to bend over a little bit and then pull up against gravity. But I'm pulling that weight towards me. Or we can use these suspension trainers. This is a TRX, it's called. So you can pull yourself up towards it. And if I angle my feet, you can change the difficulty of it. This is a form of rotation one. So this is actually anti-rotation. So I'm using my rotational muscles to stop the band pulling me round. So the band wants to pull me into rotation. I'm fighting that at the moment. Then I can pull the band around and create rotation. So that's working the muscles slightly differently there. And again, you can change the resistance of the band or step further away to create more tension. Or I can create a little bit of an angle where I pull that directly down as I rotate. So it just makes me use more abdominal muscles there. And then this one is carrying exercise. So again, this replicates that wheelbarrow. So I'm holding something in both hands and moving forwards. Or I might replicate carrying a bag or a suitcase. And I've just got it one hand. Again, it's pulling me down to one side. So I have to use my abdominals to keep that. And then this is just a different challenge of holding above my head. So it creates a bit of stability for the shoulder, but it's also pushing me down to one side that I'm having to counter. Good. So they are those kind of 7 different movement patterns. And in each movement pattern, there was kind of a few different variations. And if you've found the ebook, all those exercise variations are within the ebook. So you can have a closer look at some of them there. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed because I just suddenly threw 21 exercises at you there. It's trying to show that there's lots of different starting points, and just because you can't do what most people consider the normal squat doesn't mean you have to then discount all squats. There's ways of adapting and modifying the squat, because if you can't do a squat is a movement pattern that you should probably be focusing on rather than avoiding. We just have to find a way of adapting and modifying so you can find a good start point. Same with all the other ones there. So again, in the ebook, or whether you choose to kind of progress further with the online course, that is covered in a lot more detail. But again, they're not the only options. You could use, if you're in the gym, the fixed machines. So you could do things like leg press or chest press machine or any of those type of machines. You can do what we call isolation exercises. So those movement patterns listed there tend to use multiple muscles at the same time to create a movement. But you could pick an individual muscle. So a common example is a bicep curl. So I'm just focused on the bicep. Nothing else is really being worked at that point. And you can choose to do something like that instead. There's hundreds and countless numbers of exercises. The important thing is, once you've picked your exercises, you kind of work on those for several weeks or months before moving on and progressing again. And that kind of brings me on to the next point of, well, actually, firstly, I'll show if you only had time to do one workout a week, they're probably the 4 that I would pick: the squat, the hip hinge, the push, the pull. But again, there's plenty of choices that you could pick there. And that brings us to the next point, is consistency. So if we're looking to build strength in those muscles, we need to be consistent with the length of time we're performing them at. So a common mistake I see people make is that they one day go to the gym or at home and they do a set of 5 or 6 exercises. And the next time they come in and they fancy something doing a little bit different, and they do a different 5 or 6 exercises. And the next time they come in and they do another group of exercises. And sometimes it could be 3 or 4 weeks before you come back to the first lot and do those again. And if it's been that length of time in between doing them, you're not going to kind of get the cumulative effect that we need to build strength. So what I tend to suggest is pick 2 alternating workouts. So in one workout, you do, say, 4 or 5 exercises that you do every time you do that workout. And then the next workout is another 4 or 5 exercises that you do on that workout. And then you just alternate it between it. So you then start to build over time the culmination of working those same exercises week by week by week. And you can gradually increase the weight to try and get from the 15 repetitions closer to that 5 repetitions. And you might be working on those for 3 or 4 months. And then after that time, you can then mix things up and change things. But to start with, you do need to be kind of working the same exercises consistently to see any progress with them and to build strength in those muscle groups. And then I've mentioned it a little bit there, is progression. Is ideally we want to reach muscle fatigue within 15 repetitions. And if we can, we're going to get closer to 5. But even if you stayed at 15, that's fine. But what I tend to say at the start is, once you've picked your exercises, just start getting used to the exercises. You might not even have any weight or resistance to start with. You don't need to rush to push into muscle fatigue. We just need to get confident doing the exercises and feel like you're comfortable there. Then once you're comfortable with those, you can start to add a little bit of weight and start getting used to doing those exercises with some weight. Once you've done that, you can then start to increase the weight you use. So you start to explore trying to find that muscle fatigue at around 15 repetitions. And then once you're comfortable with that, then we can start to try and increase the weight a little bit. So we might bring that fatigue point down from 15 to maybe 12 repetitions. And then over a few more weeks to 10, then to 8, then to 6, and then maybe to the 5. And that whole process could take 3 months. It could take 4 or 5. But as long as you know where the progression points are going to be, and you know that you do need to progress in order to build strength, then I don't care how long that progression takes, particularly when we've got things like the hiatus hernia there, or the knee pain, or the chronic fatigue. Is by rushing it, the chances are you might cause a reaction, and then you're going to have to sort of hold back a little bit, let it recover before you can build again. So yeah, the important thing is we know how to progress, and then we do have the confidence to progress when we're ready for it. Because again, the common mistake I see is people take their first step out of the comfort zone, they start working out, they start doing things against resistance, but they get scared to take another step out of that comfort zone. So they stick with the same weight. And whilst you might have found muscle fatigue at 15 repetitions with a certain weight, after a few weeks, that weight won't be challenging enough. And what you probably find is you're now no longer reaching muscle fatigue. You probably could have done another 5 or 6 repetitions if you'd worked on it. But people then sort of, because it was so uncomfortable finding this safe space, they just stay in that safe space and never really progress. So we do want to make sure we do try and build on that. And then, yeah, bit of a recap there. So in order to build muscle strength, to develop a strengthening program, we firstly need to create some goals. You need to learn, why is it that we're doing the things that we're doing? What are you trying to achieve? What will being stronger mean to you? what opportunities will that open up? How will that make you feel? How will that strengthen relationship with other people? So the deeper you go with it, the better. Then it will really help to motivate you as you're kind of working on, particularly as you get a few weeks in, and sometimes you get quite quick progression at the start. And initially, we're looking for the brain to work out the most efficient way of using the muscle strength you've already got. And then once your brain's worked out that how to be the most efficient with what you've got, it then has to wait for the muscles to recover. So you get what people refer to as a plateau. And if you reach that plateau, having seen such fast progress before, and now you're not getting such much progress, so you don't really see the progress or notice it because it is a lot slower, people often fall off at that point because it's demoralizing when you can't see so much progress. And if you're not seeing the goals you're progressing towards, you're likely to fall off. So goal planning is really important. We talked about the exercise selection there. You don't want to kind of overwhelm yourself with too many exercises. So 4 or 5 in a workout is fine on one workout, and the next workout you do another 4 or 5. Once we pick the exercise, we want to eventually get to a point of training to fatigue, and it's a training to fatigue that's really going to build the muscle strength. Then we need to stay consistent. So we need to stay consistent over time. It takes about 3 months of working and pushing the muscles to fatigue over 3 months consistently for the muscles to actually get any stronger and to build in size. It's not to say you won't see any improvements before then, because say as your brain works out to work the muscles efficiently, they produce more force and you do get stronger, but the muscles themselves don't actually change that much until about 3 months. So if you're hoping that 2 or 3 weeks of doing this, you'll get stronger and then you don't need to do anything again, that's just not going to happen. This has got to be something we build into routine and continue to work on. And then don't forget to progress. We do want to keep progressing over time, but we don't want to rush. We want to allow your body time to adapt and respond if it does flare up as you're going through. Just a message from Vic there saying, apologies, I just managed to join. I shall have to recap on the replay. Yeah, there will be a replay. I'm going to be sending that out later, either today or tomorrow morning. So yeah, you can watch that then at your own leisure. And for anyone watching now, if there's bits you want to go back to and recap, then again, do watch the replay there. It doesn't mean you won't get any value watching the rest of this, Vic, or I'm about to go into talking about the online course that I've got and how that might help as well. But I'd love to know, for those of you who've watched the whole way through, what was the most useful thing? What's the key takeaway? I'm always intrigued to know if any of that was new or which bit was kind of stood out to you the most. So yeah, I'll just let you sort of type a little bit there. And like I say, in a second, I'm going to talk about the online course and if that is something you might be interested in. But like I say, all the information we had there combined with the ebook is enough to get you started. The online course is just kind of another more interactive way with a little bit more support that might just help you as you're going through. So we'll talk about that in a second. I can see a few of you typing there. So I need to say is not to try and increase the weights too quickly and to give yourself time. So he says how many number of reps for you to work at, I think. Then I think Eve's just typing. Yeah, Eve says patience and a good goal. Brilliant. So coming into there, so the online course I keep referring to is called Stronger for Life. It's a more interactive way of going through a lot of the theory that is covered in the ebook, and I've covered a bit on this talk. But it's really going to help you develop a plan to create a strengthening program around your current start point. And that start point is going to be dictated to around any age-related conditions you've got, any particular restrictions, pains, fatigue levels, etc. And because I've recognized that trying to join a one-size-fits-all program on a YouTube channel, it just doesn't work, because either it's too advanced for you and you cause a reaction, or you have to skip a load of the exercises out, or it's not challenging enough and you're not pushing to the right intensity to get muscle strength. So this is going to help you really understand what we want to achieve and help you give you the knowledge to create your own program, and then how to progress it, as we talked about. And as a result, you're going to build your strength and confidence, and it's going to allow you to look forward to an active future. So I've kind of broken the course into sort of 3 stages. So you're going to have a much more in-depth guide to the goal planning and the importance of that, and how kind of going deeper into the goal planning rather than just having a few superficial goals really helps the motivation. One of the things that's not in the ebook that is in the course is the introduction to some of the baseline tests. So going through there's sort of 3 or 4 baseline tests. If you go through them at the start, 6 weeks in, 12 weeks in, 18 weeks in, etc., every 6 weeks I tend to suggest, whilst you can see some of the improvements in the weights you lift, actually going back to these baseline tests and seeing some of the scores in these tests improve, it shows it's not just the improvements in the gym you're noticing, it's the things outside the gym that's starting to improve, and they're really useful to monitor. And then the course is kind of a self-led thing in terms of how fast you want to work through it. So you don't, if you're going through the videos a little bit more slowly, it might take you longer to get to the point where you've actually created your own workout to start on. So in the meantime, there's a body weight workout you could do a couple of times a week to just get you in the routine of starting to turn up and do a workout. Again, you probably won't get to the fatigue point yet, but it's trying to build that routine first. Then whilst we're still in that preparatory phase, I'm going to just start to introduce you to some of the equipment that you might be ready to use straight away, or you might aspire to use at some point in the future, whether that's in the gym or at home. Because again, I said at the start, you might be fine using things like bottles of water and a rucksack to start with, but eventually you're probably going to want something you can use at home, and you might need to buy a few things or source things from friends who aren't using them, or from eBay, etc. A bit more familiarization with the most important principles, because I'm really a firm believer that if you understand why you're doing the things you're doing, you'll then commit and have more motivation to do them. Whereas if you're just doing them for the sake of doing them and without much of a understanding of why, as things feel hard, you'll probably then sort of lose interest. So we'll go through a bit more of that. And then again, as well as a body weight workout, there's an option of a resistance band routine you can do whilst you're building a program, which builds us into the program planning phase. So we're going to have a look at those movement patterns in more depth and those exercise variations that you might be able to choose from. Depending on what option you take on the course, there's the option to have weekly group Zoom calls with me. So again, if you find that none of the exercise variations for a particular movement pattern work for you because you're too uncomfortable in them, or it just brings on pain, etc., then we can talk through and work through finding another solution. But I didn't want to I've given 3 exercises for each movement pattern, because if I gave 5 or 6 movement options for each movement pattern, there's just so much choice that you kind of get lost with it all. Equally, if I only gave 1 option, if you can't do it, you feel, oh, what's the point? So yeah, there's 3 in there, but sometimes you might not be able to do any of those 3. And that doesn't mean you can't get started with that movement pattern. It just means we need a little bit more help. So if that's the case, you reach out to me and we will go through that. And then I'll help you put that into a program. And then we get on to performing phase. You get to stop doing those body weight and the resistance band workout, and you get to start your first workout that you've created for yourself. I'll guide you on documenting your workouts, which is really important, and then how to plan for progressions and know when to make those steps in order to progress. So once you sign up to the course, you'll get onto the login page. I use a software called Teachable that is all housed in. So once you put your email and password in, you'll then get through to this dashboard where you get to see what video you got next. So you just literally click the start lesson and it will start. And as we go through the sort of 7 different modules, you'll see that each module has got a certain number of lessons, and each lesson is very small bite-sized chunks. So in that module 1, 48 seconds, 4 minutes 59, 5 minutes 22, 1 minute 11. And then as you go into module 2, a minute, 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. So they're all small bite-sized chunks. You get to kind of watch a video, keep your attention to it, and then move on to the next one. But also if you want to go back and see a certain aspect, you haven't got to kind of try and scroll through an hour-long video to find where was the bit that he talked about this. It'll be easy to kind of get yourself back to that video. Once you're on and picked a lesson, you'll see that it kind of opens up this bit to the side. So you have a bit of writing, you'll have the video and a little bit of kind of the button to complete underneath. All the videos have got subtitles. If you're hard of hearing at all, then I've tried to check all the subtitles and I'm confident they're 99% accurate with a few typos in there probably. But yeah, you'll have that there. And then when you're ready, you just kind of go on to the next lesson. And if you notice on the left-hand side, there's a green circles. The one it's currently selected is half green, half white. And then as you complete it, it goes completely green. And then the ones that haven't been started yet are just the green outline with a white middle. So every time you go through, you'll see exactly where you got to, and you can start off. So you can log out and log back on another day and easily get back to where you started from. Then, as well as access kind of to the course there's a few other things you'll get. You'll get access to a Facebook group where only people that are either currently on the course or have done the course have access to, and you maintain access to that. But it means you get to kind of ask questions, and yes, I can answer from my side, but actually having someone else who's gone through it or is going through it at the same time as you can be really useful. So it's a really nice community feel in there. You'll have lifetime access to the course. It's not a thing that you have it for 12 weeks and then you lose access. For as long as I'm running the course, you'll have access to it. And if I update it, you'll get access to all the updates as well. I've got an online store that's got things like the t-shirt here, some water bottles, hoodies, a few other bits and pieces, but you'll get a discount on those products. And then the really important thing there is you'll get the 30-day no questions money back guarantee. So if you join the course and you feel like you're not in a position where you feel confident to start, and you reach out to me by email and I've not been able to help you there, and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere, I'm not doing the job that I set out to do, so I'd be more than happy to issue the refund there. So that takes away some of the risk of joining. I'd say I'm here because I really want to help you get started, and I will do my best to do that. So yeah, do reach out. But if within 30 days you feel it's not for you, then I'm more than happy to get the refund there. And you'll see in a second, there's a few packages, and the kind of most popular package, you get the group calls with myself as well. So they are at 10:30 on a Wednesday morning, which I realise not everyone can make, which is why I've kind of put it in the packages. So you can get a course on its own, the course with the group calls, and then there's a course with the group calls plus a one-to-one call with me. But the group calls are really good because it's just little small groups. We'd never really have any more than 7 or 8 people on the call at any time, but you get to go in, share your progress, share any problems you might be facing. And then between all of us, it's not just me kind of giving the answers. Everyone helps each other, but it's a nice little community feel where you can kind of problem solve, but also provide accountability to each other. And I'm really happy with how that has evolved into this kind of community feel there, which is really important to know there's others going through it at the same time as you. And like I say, there's a one-to-one Zoom call with myself. So whether some people take it at the start, some people take it a little bit once they've got going and they've got a few more questions to ask. But that's another option there. That's an example of the Facebook group that you get access to. That's one of the group calls that we have. Again, 10:30 on a Wednesday morning. And then just wanted to show you some of the stories that some of the others have mentioned here. So again, just a couple of minute video. Just wait for that to load, hopefully.
I was regularly taking anti-inflammatories and paracetamol. The right leg would always have a sensation when I was walking that it was actually going to give way underneath me, but I no longer have those. And I'm just 4 weeks in. I feel stronger, sleeping a lot better than I've ever slept before.
I did my workout on Saturday morning and then spent about sort of 4 or 5 hours in the garden. I would be aware of my back after that time. I probably have to do a bit of yoga or something. But back felt absolutely fine. It was really, really good. When I play tennis, my serve's getting better, it's improving, it's getting stronger and faster. And I think that's just due to strength in my arm. That's just all in the first 3 weeks. So really pleased that I can actually see some benefits so quickly, which is great.
I Never thought I would go back to the gym, but I am. I'm off to the gym shortly. You can do it from home, you can use a gym. It's so well laid out, it's so easy to follow. The support from you and from the group is amazing. Your questions are answered really quickly. Everyone supports each other and encourages each other.
I've got to say, it's amazing, and it's not too long. You can stop, you know, and come in and out. I'm really impressed, and I've done a lot of these sort of things and really impressed Chris. It's amazing.
Last week, I think, was the first time I can remember where I really do feel as I went to sleep and was sort of log-like for 8-9 hours, which was just heaven.
And one bit that really impressed me was the Zoom calls where you see other people in the same situation doing the same thing, and that's very encouraging. And it also makes you a little bit accountable. You've got to report your progress kind of thing, and you can also get excellent advice from Chris, who as a qualified physiotherapist, he doesn't tell you any stuff that is likely to injure you. He's very, very careful to make sure that that's not the case.
I'm hooked. I'm hooked. It's great.
Definitely working for me, and I will continue this.
Thank you so much for your Stronger for Life. It's been amazing.
So yeah, so great to hear some of their stories there, and again, kind words from them to me. But it's them that put the work in, and for me, it's going to highlight the importance of building strength there rather than the importance of joining the course. I'm really confident if you start incorporating strength training into your routine, you're going to see some of the benefits that they might have had. And if you want to do it via the course, then that'd be great, and I'd be happy to help. In terms of the course and the options, so I talked about 3 options there. So what I'm doing for this week, so up until Tuesday next week, which I forget the date now, will be 15th today, but yeah, next Tuesday, 11.59, it will go back to normal price. But for this week, there's £100 off the price. So you can either go for the course on its own, but again, you get the access to the Facebook group still, and the discount there, and the money back guarantee. That's £98. If you want the course plus the group calls, which is kind of the most popular option, you'll get the course Facebook group discount, and then you'll get the weekly Q&A sessions. They're the ones at 10:30 on a Wednesday, and that's £148. And then if you want the course, the group calls, and then a one-to-one call with myself, that's £198 there. So that's kind of the most support you'll get. And that's nevertoldtolift.com/stronger for life. So just put that link in the chat, and that should go there. What I'm also offering for anyone who buys today, I'm also going to give an additional one-to-one call. So if you go for options 1 or 2, you'll then get a call with myself for free, which we can book in the next few weeks, depending on the time that you want to do it, whether you want it right from the start or whether you want to try a bit of the course first and then book it in. If you go for option 3, you'll then get an additional call. So you'll then get 2 calls. So some people then will take it at the start and then another one, say 6 weeks in, or whenever they feel like they need that call. So yeah, that's for today. So Wednesday the 15th. If you sign up today, then I'll throw in that call as part of it there. It's not. And then as a reminder, so you get full lifetime access to the course, access to the Facebook group, £100 off the price if you buy before the end of Tuesday next week, discount on the products, the 30-day guarantee, and then if you go for the option of the weekly group calls, and then the other option of the group call with myself, and then the additional one if you buy it today, and that is the link there. And that's a reminder of the packages. So with that, it's the end of the online presentation. So yeah, as I've sort of promised earlier, I've got plenty of time now, as long as we need. Well, I say that as long as it's not over half an hour, then I need to go and pick up my son from nursery. But yeah, to answer any questions, so whether it's about the course, whether it's about anything I covered above, anything related to sort of strength training or getting started, if it's a very sort of specific question to you as an individual, I might suggest that I'll email you with a response, but if it's something that's going to help everyone as well. But yeah, please feel free to use this opportunity to ask any questions or provide any feedback, and we'll go from there. So Anita's typing at the moment. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I'll be sending out either later today or tomorrow morning the replay via email. So if you've got any sort of things you want to kind of go back and recap on, then there's no kind of expiry to this recording. You can kind of watch that as much as you want. Anita says, can I get started on it in a few weeks as other commitments now? Obviously I would buy it first. So yeah, absolutely fine, because like I say, in terms of getting to the point where you create your own workout program, some people do it very quickly and they get through all the videos very quickly and they kind of create their workout program and they do it all within a few days or within a week. A lot of people who've done the course have just gone through bite-sized chunks at a time and they're just absorbing the sort of the theory and the knowledge, and it's taken some people a month or two to actually get to the point of starting. Or I had one person who bought it who's having surgery the next week and then needed 2 months to recover before we could really get into it. So again, there's no starting straight away has a benefit of, if there's a few of you that all buy it at the same time, you've got kind of almost cohort feel of who's starting at point at the same time. But if you're only a few weeks out, that won't be much of a change. And so yeah, absolutely fine to do it that way. Jan says, I don't think I've received the link to ebook. So let me, if I quickly find you the link there. I've lost the tab now. Right, here we go. So this link will kind of give you the option of then downloading the ebook for free. So you just put your email and your first name in there. And again, that has got all the information in. It's also, if you don't like ebooks and reading off a screen and you rather paperback copy, then there is also an option available from Amazon. So you just search Never Taught to Lift on Amazon, you find that there. But yeah, I would say that you can either kind of just take this talk and that free ebook, and that is enough to get started. If you're like me and you're the type of person that prefers watching the film to reading the book and need that visual component and the ability to maybe have access to me on a weekly group, so it's a lot more supportive and interactive, the course, and that isn't a better option for some, but a lot of people do brilliantly just through the ebook and the talk I've done today. And equally, it doesn't need to be kind of the program I've tried to lay out in any way at all. You can use other programs you find online and just use the theory you've learned of pushing to fatigue and planning for progression and staying consistent and knowing they're the important bits. And you can do it with any exercise program you use as well. So yeah, my aim is just to kind of just give you as much knowledge as I can. But I think for the moment, that sounds like it might be all the questions. But if there are any other questions at any point, my email is chris@nevertooldtolift.com. So that's chris@nevertooldtolift.com. If you've got any other questions that you do want to ask kind of in the chat, or you think of another one later, then please do let me know and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions there. But with that, I think that brings us to a close. So thanks very much for your attention and for staying for the whole, end up being closer to an hour and a half. So yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.